Hey Everett, I like this video a lot. I'm gonna reply to it point by point. I've got my earphones on because I'm playing it and responding to it. I have already watched it though. So the first thing was just my point that uh, about existence being defined in terms of our past experiences because as I said, it would be foolish to think of anything beyond that. Specifically, anything beyond that is by definition metaphysics. Now we can play around with metaphysics all we want, but we know the sense in which it's foolish to indulge in metaphysics. Now, in terms of things that are independent of the human mind, I don't give them a particular word except for metaphysics. Unicorn is not an example. Unicorn comes from the human mind, so obviously, that exists as an imaginary thing. It does exist. It also comes from the senses in the sense that it's based on horns and horses, which are things that we have sensed previously and then rearranged. In terms of what knowledge is, of course, that's the subject matter of a whole epistemology, answering all the questions of that. But basically, there's a couple important perspectives on knowledge. One is just as a cognitive phenomenon. What is knowledge? Well, it's a category of belief. You put beliefs in this category, they can said to be in this category of knowledge based on, your intention to rely on them to make judgments. On the other hand, what is knowledge is things you can demonstrate. So knowledge is action. If you can do something to demonstrate your knowledge, then you actually have the knowledge you claim to have. If you say, I know how to diagram a sentence, then you diagram a sentence. Show me. If you diagram sentences at will, then I'll believe that you know that. Now, your point that existence is the definition of existence is trying to find something external and independent of us. No, this is the point. We have discovered that there is no such thing. We cannot define things that are entirely independent of us. We are actually defining things that are not independent of us that we have interacted with. Now, how would I speak of something that is independent? Well, by the fact that it's potentially something that we could sense. Now, I know this by indirect sensations, that things you tell me that I haven't seen, I have a belief a lot of time that I could experience that. If you say you've been to Yugoslavia, I believe I could probably experience Yugoslavia, so I believe that also exists, even though it's somewhat independent, but not entirely, because the only way I know about it is through these indirect sensations, meaning other people's sensations which they have relayed to me. So that's how I would speak of things, that are quote unquote independent of us. But if they're in some other universe that we can interact with the physics of, or if they are just even outside of the cone of possible interactions we've had with material things that we can have, they're outside the cone of all of experiences that we potentially can have, then they, for all intents and purposes, don't exist for us. And if we can get some indirect knowledge about them, then we could say they exist, but it's always through their relationship with us. Now, in terms of making up new terms, you might as well tell a mathematician, don't make corrections to mathematical formula. You talk about the N-word. Now, here's the thing. When you use a word, it brings with it the framing. Some words should just be thrown out because, see, when you make a new definition for the N-word, you haven't made a new framing. And when you use that word, you're going to bring it in, and it's going to hurt people's feelings and the sorts of things that you mentioned. So that's a reason not to use it, right? So you don't want to invoke this framing that is out there. In terms I redefine, it's the same thing. You see, the deal is existence. I do want to invoke the framing of existence. I just think we should understand it better. So I'm redefining the term, but I want to take the definition. Now, with objectivity, it's a little bit more funky. I still actually want some of the framing of the objective world, and I sometimes use the word objective. I've redefined it in terms of subjectivity, again, to it's so that we talk about objectivity, in a valid way. But if there's a word that just needs to be thrown out, like objectivism, I don't really try to redefine it. I just say, let's throw it out, because the framing has to be thrown out. So now I've met people that try to redefine the N-word this way and say, oh, it's not about being black, it's about this, that, and the other, and they try to make an abstraction. And I don't go for that because I don't want to carry along this framing. Now, in general, it's the job of philosophers to go ahead and invent new words, because these words are attached to tools, which are themselves frames that we can use to work on other frames. So we all do these redefinitions when we do philosophy, and we try to understand a word. We sometimes pretend we're trying to get this essential meaning of the word, but we're just trying to find a good, useful meaning. When you talk about the subliminal parts of that word, you're talking about the framing being invoked. We can change the meaning of words, and we can change the framing being invoked. There are no inherent, unchangeable meanings in words. None. The words and language is in a constant flux and evolution, and we're trying to improve it. It's our tool set. Some words are very useful, and like the hammer, they won't have to evolve a lot. But then again, they also will specialize in certain roles, and we'll need new terms to handle things that maybe we used to use a hammer for. It is our job as philosophers to manipulate the language in this way, to create new definitions, to fix old definitions, and so on. At least that's my belief. Now, another thing here is that I'm not defining terms to be totally different. I'm not defining an orange to be an apple, or a racial epithet to mean pie. I have a method to the way I redefine terms that I think still need to be used. And yes, to a certain degree, it's because I want to get a hold of this visceral feeling about things like knowledge and existence. What I do is I look at the things that we say exist, and I deduce a new intentional meaning. So this is called an extensional analysis, because the things that we say exist, that we just put in a category called existence, those are real things, and we have named the category that they go into. That is the extension. That is the set of things that word applies to. And what we're doing is we're trying to improve the intentional, the definition that you might find in a dictionary that's supposed to be like an algorithm that you can use to pick out of the real world the things that should go in that set. In other words, I know something exists when I see it. I say that it exists. And now I need a bunch of words that can describe that thing and put it in the list. An alternate way to see if the principled approach, which is the intentional one, matches the practical approach, which is the extensional one. And my definition of existence, therefore, ends up being very compatible. The same kinds of things exist. But some things that happen with the new intentional definition is it suggests other things should be in the list. For example, unicorns. Unicorns exist. They exist as ideas, but they do exist. Now, a normal, regular, old definition of existence is trying to exclude unicorns. But it really couldn't be done. It failed at that. It has no proper claim on the word existence because it failed. It failed to pick out the things that exist consistently. Now, is it acceptable if my definition brings other things into the extension? Yes and no. I mean, we still need a definition now for things that exist materially that the unicorn doesn't satisfy. But those definitions come much better from the way I've arranged the terms than they did previously. So I'm offering a better solution to get compatible parts. It's like I'm building a new engine that you can put in your car and drive. And it does actually work, and it is still an engine, even if you thought an engine meant that it had to use gasoline, or it had to have pistons, or it had to be this way or that way. Maybe it's no longer an internal combustion engine. Maybe it's an electric engine. Maybe it's a hydrogen cell engine. It's still an engine. And in that sense, my definitions still have a claim to fill this role that a definition of existence is supposed to fill. Same thing with knowledge. I look out there, I say, well, what is real knowledge? And I find out, well, for one thing, it's things that are demonstrably true. For another thing, it's not certain. For another thing, and so on and so on. But it's still the same extension. The things that we know is still pretty much the same extension. But yes, with a different definition, it comes into different things. Do get suggested to go in that extension. We have to decide empirically, does it really make sense for the knowledge to go in this set. Well, considering that by the definition, the classical definition of knowledge, there is nothing in the extension, it picks out nothing. You're saying that I'm supposed to look at this defining knowledge. Here's a bunch of examples of knowledge. Let me abstract a definition, and I abstract a definition, and then it picks out exactly nothing to go in the extension. That has failed. My definition does not do that. My definition is able to do postdiction on knowledge and put things that are knowledge into that set. Things that we demonstrate specifically go into that set. And to the degree that it also changes a little bit the set, for example, at one point we knew God was good, and we knew that there was a God, and that was in our set of knowledge. Well, my definition of knowledge doesn't really allow for that because there's no central experience to support that. Good, I think that's the point of a good intentional definition, is to help you also improve and get a better set than what you just threw in there as you evolved and as it made sense to you as you knew it when you saw it. You thought you knew that there was a spear in the tree because you saw a spear in the tree, but we found out that was an illusion, and now we need a different definition of knowledge.